I was sitting at the worn wooden table in my parents' Denver home, the scent of polished oak and old leather filling the air, when my phone buzzed with a text from my brother James. The message was short, but it hit me like a freight train. "Emily, we need to talk. You're out of the antique shop. Dad agrees." My hands froze, a teacup trembling in my grip, the warm tea spilling onto the saucer. Out? After everything I'd done to save that place, I stared at the screen, my heart sinking, until another text came. "Come over tonight, it's final." The dining room felt smaller as I arrived that evening, the familiar creak of the floorboards underfoot now sounding like a judgment. James, 40, lounged in his chair, his smug grin cutting through the tension. Mom and Dad sat across from me, their faces set. "Just so you know, Emily," James leaned forward, his voice dripping with arrogance, "we wanted you to tell you now, so there's no confusion. Later, everything goes to me. The shop, the inventory, all of it." I blinked, my breath catching. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Exactly what he said," Mom interjected, her tone sharp, her smile gone. "Your father and I have decided. The antique shop, the house, it's all going to James." I turned to Dad, searching for a hint of doubt, but his eyes stayed fixed on his plate, avoiding mine. The silence stretched heavy and suffocating until he spoke, his voice low. "Emily, you have to understand," he said, folding his hands. "You've done well with your designs, and we're proud. But James needs this more. He's still building his life." Proud, I thought, my chest tightening. I'd poured my soul into that shop, designing pieces that turned it from a failing relic into a thriving business. And now they were handing it to James, who'd barely lifted a finger. I called my friend Thomas Gray, a lawyer I'd known for years, my hands shaking as I dialed. Thomas picked up on the second ring, his voice calm until I explained. "Emily," he gasped, "are you saying James and your dad did this without warning?" "Yes," I whispered. He cursed under his breath. "Don't sign anything," he warned. "I'll look into it." My mind raced. This couldn't be real. That night, I lay awake, the weight of their betrayal sinking in. I'd saved the family business. And this was my reward. I grabbed my phone, texting Thomas again. "What should I do?" His reply was quick. "Meet me tomorrow. We'll figure this out." As I stared at the ceiling, a fire ignited inside me. They thought they could erase me, but I was done being their shadow. Hook. My family stole my designs to save our antique shop, then cut me out, but I exposed their $1.8 million scam and took it all back. The next morning, I sat in Thomas's office, the hum of traffic outside a distant echo to the storm in my mind. My thoughts drifted back to how it all began. At 38, I'd spent years as a designer, turning my passion for antiques into a lifeline for our family shop in Denver. Carter's Antiques had been on the brink of collapse 3 years ago, its dusty shelves and outdated stock driving customers away. I stepped in, sketching unique designs that blended vintage charm with modern flair, reviving the business with a series of sold-out collections. The shop's profits soared, and for a while, it felt like a family triumph. But that harmony didn't last. James, my older brother, had always been the favored child. At 40, he drifted through odd jobs, relying on Dad's support, while I worked late nights in the workshop, sanding wood and stitching fabrics. Mom and Dad praised my efforts, but their words felt hollow. James would saunter in, offering vague ideas, and they'd nod, as if he were the genius. I ignored it, believing my hard work would speak for itself. Then, 6 months ago, things shifted. Dad started closing the office door with James, their whispers about future plans growing louder. One evening, I overheard them in the back room. "We can't keep relying on her designs," James said, his voice low. We need to secure our future. Dad agreed, muttering about selling something big. I brushed it off, thinking it was about inventory, but my gut twisted. Over the next few weeks, they stopped sharing financial updates, dodging my questions with smiles and excuses. The shop's success was mine, yet I felt like an outsider. I'd bring in new clients, and James would take credit, his charm winning over Dad and Mom. The betrayal deepened when I caught James with a stranger in the showroom, a man in a suit flipping through my sketchbook. I confronted him, but he laughed it off, saying, "Just exploring options, Em." Mom defended him, patting my shoulder. "He's learning," she said. I let it slide, my trust in them blinding me to the truth. But last month, I noticed discrepancies in the ledger, large withdrawals I couldn't trace. I asked Dad, and he brushed me off with, "It's handled, Emily." The unease grew, but I buried it, focusing on my next design. Then came that dinner, the text from James shattering my world. I called my friend Claire Evans, an auctioneer I'd known since college, my voice trembling. "Claire, something's wrong," I said. "James and Dad are cutting me out of the shop." She paused, then asked, "What happened?" I told her about the text, the years of work, and my suspicions about money. She sighed. "I've seen shady deals, Emily. Let me dig into it." I hung up, my mind racing. If they'd betrayed me with the shop, what else were they hiding? The answer was coming, and I was ready to face it. The next day, I met Claire at a quiet cafe, her laptop open, her face grim. She'd spent the night digging into Carter's Antiques finances, and what she found made my blood run cold. "Emily," she said, sliding a printout toward me, "there's a transfer of $1.8 million from the shop's account to an offshore entity last month." My hands shook as I scanned the numbers. "What?" I whispered. She nodded. "It's tied to your designs, the ones you created to save us. They sold them." I stared at the paper, my mind reeling. $1.8 million for my work? I'd poured months into those sketches, staying up late to perfect every detail, believing it was for the family. Claire leaned closer. I cross-checked with a contact at the auction house. They sold the rights to a luxury brand, claiming it was James's idea. My chest tightened. "That's a lie," I said, my voice rising. "It was mine." She squeezed my hand. "I know. We need proof." That night, I couldn't sleep. The betrayal gnawed at me, fueling a desperate need to confirm Claire's findings. I drove to the shop after midnight, the streets of Denver silent under a thin layer of snow. The back door creaked as I slipped inside, my flashlight cutting through the dark. I headed to Dad's office, a room he'd always kept locked, but I knew the key was hidden under a loose floorboard, a trick I'd learned as a kid. My fingers fumbled, lifting the board, and there it was, a metal box. Inside, I found a contract, its pages crisp and dated last month. It detailed the sale of my design collection to a company called Lux Heritage for $1.8 million, signed by James and Dad. A separate note read, "Keep Emily out. She'll demand a share." My stomach churned. They'd planned this, excluded me deliberately. I photographed every page, my hands trembling, and emailed them to myself and Claire with a note. "If anything happens, get these to a lawyer." I called Claire the next morning, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Claire, I found it," I said. "A contract for $1.8 million. She sucked in a breath. "That's theft, Emily. They can't do that. You're entitled to half." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "I think Thomas knows something," I added. She agreed. "Call him. Push him." I dialed Thomas Gray, my pulse racing. "Thomas," I said when he answered, "I've got proof. $1.8 million from my designs. You knew, didn't you?" There was a pause, then a sigh. I warned James and your dad this was illegal, he admitted. They sold your work, planning to cut you out and keep the profits. I told them, if you found out, it'd ruin them. But they thought you'd never check. My grip tightened. Why tell me now? I demanded. He chuckled dryly. I'm not going down with them. With that evidence, you'll win. You need your own lawyer. Who? I asked. Sophia Lee, he said. She's fierce. I spent the afternoon photographing more documents, saving them securely. James and Dad thought I was too soft to fight, but they were wrong. I called Sophia, her voice brisk as she took my case. We'll freeze their assets, she promised. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. They'd underestimated me, and now I was ready to take them down. The next morning, I met Sophia Lee at her Denver office, a sleek space with views of the Rockies. She reviewed the contract and photos I'd brought, her expression darkening. This is solid, Emily, she said, tapping the papers. They sold your designs without your consent, and the offshore account proves intent to hide it. My hands clenched. So what now? I asked. She leaned forward. We file a claim for half, $900,000, plus damages. We'll freeze their accounts tomorrow. I nodded. A surge of power, replacing my fear. But there's more, I said, hesitating. Claire mentioned James talking about future plans. Sophia raised an eyebrow. What kind? I explained how I'd overheard him hinting at cutting Dad out after the sale. She frowned. That's leverage. We'll dig deeper. I left her office, my mind racing. If James was plotting against Dad, this could unravel their alliance. That afternoon, I called Thomas again, my voice firm. Thomas, I need the truth, I said. What else are they hiding? He sighed, his tone reluctant. James wanted the full $1.8 million, he confessed. He planned to ditch your dad after the deal, claiming he brokered it alone. My jaw dropped. So Dad's a pawn, too? Thomas chuckled. Looks like it. Sophia can use this. I thanked him, hanging up, a twisted satisfaction growing. James's greed might be his undoing. I met Claire later, her face alight with new findings. I tracked the buyer, she said. Lux. Heritage. Paid through a shell company. But I got a name. Richard Holt, their CEO. He's meeting James next week. My pulse quickened. Can we get evidence? She nodded. I'll send someone to that meeting. We need to catch them in the act. I hugged her, grateful for her support. This was bigger than I'd thought. The next day, Sophia called. We've frozen their accounts, she said. James is furious, calling me nonstop. Good, I replied. Let him squirm. She laughed. He's claiming you're overreacting, but the contract's airtight. I asked about the twist with Dad. She paused. If James betrays him, it could split them. We'll subpoena James's emails. I hung up, my plan taking shape. They thought I'd fade away, but I was fighting back. That evening, I overheard James on the phone at the shop, his voice low. Holt, we'll cut Dad out after the next payment, he said. My heart raced. I recorded it, sending the audio to Sophia. This is gold, she texted back. We'll use it. The next morning, I found a note on my doorstep. Back off, Emily. No signature, but I knew it was James. Fear flickered, but anger won. I called Sophia again. They're threatening me, I said. She growled. We'll get a restraining order. You're not alone. As I prepared for the next step, a realization hit. James's betrayal of Dad could be my weapon. I spent the night organizing evidence, my hands steady. They'd stolen my designs, my legacy, but I was about to reclaim it all. The $1.8 million was mine to fight for, and their downfall was just beginning. The following week, I planned my revenge, knowing the shop's grand reopening was the perfect stage. James had invited family and local collectors, boasting about new designs, my designs. I decided to turn their celebration into my reckoning. I called Sophia, my voice steady. I want to expose them at the event, I said. She agreed. We'll have a lawyer there. Bring the evidence. The night arrived, the shop buzzing with chatter, the air thick with the scent of aged wood and champagne. Mom and Dad mingled, proud smiles on their faces, while James played the host, shaking hands like a king. I stood near the entrance, my heart pounding, a folder of documents clutched in my hands. As James took the stage to speak, I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the room. "Wait," I said, loud enough to silence the crowd. Every eye turned to me, and James's smirk faded. "What's this?" he snapped. I held up the folder. "This is the truth," I said. "For years, I designed the pieces that saved this shop. But last month, you and Dad sold my work for $1.8 million, cutting me out." Gasps rippled through the room. I opened the folder, displaying the contract. "This proves it. You stole from me." Dad's face paled. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, but James lunged forward. "That's a lie," he shouted. "I created those designs." I shook my head, pulling out the audio recording. "Listen," I said, playing it. His voice, plotting with Holt, filled the room. The crowd murmured, shocked. Sophia stepped up, her presence commanding. "This is fraud," she declared. "We're suing for Emily's share." The room erupted. Uncle Paul, Dad's brother, demanded answers while Aunt Margaret glared at James. "You've shamed us," she hissed. Mom tried to intervene, her voice trembling. "Emily, this is family business," but I cut her off. "Family doesn't steal," I said, my voice rising. "You used me, and now you'll pay. I'm taking my half, $900,000, and I'm done." James's face turned red, his fists clenched. "You'll regret this," he spat. But the damage was done. Collectors whispered, some leaving. Their trust in the shop shattered. I saw a crack in his confidence as a buyer pulled James aside, his tone sharp. "This changes things," the man said. I stepped back, my heart racing with triumph. This was my moment. Driving home, I replayed the scene, the looks of shock and shame fueling me. Sophia called, her voice excited. "They're rattled," she said. "We'll file tomorrow." I smiled, the first real one in days. "What about Dad?" I asked. She paused. "If James betrays him, it could split them. We'll watch for it." I hung up, knowing the next move was mine. They'd underestimated me, but I was no longer the quiet sister they could control. 2 days later, I was sorting through old sketches at home when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was from Holt, the Lux Heritage CEO. "Meet me at the park, 6 p.m., it read. "We need to talk." My stomach flipped, but curiosity drove me. I agreed, unsure what to expect. At the park, Holt sat on a bench, his suit wrinkled, his expression tense. "Emily," he said as I approached, "I owe you an explanation." I crossed my arms. "Start talking." He sighed. "James promised me exclusive rights, but he's been negotiating with another buyer behind my back." I frowned. "What does that mean?" Holt's jaw tightened. "He's trying to double dip, sell the designs again. I'm out $1.8 million unless I act first." My mind raced. "So you're betraying him?" I asked. Holt nodded. "I'm pulling out, taking my money back, but I'll testify if you need it." I felt a surge of twisted satisfaction. James's greed had turned on him. "Do it," I said. He agreed, handing me a recorded call where James admitted the second deal. I sent it to Sophia, my heart pounding. "This is gold," she texted. "We'll use it." The next day, James called, his voice desperate. "Emily, please," he begged. "Holt's dropping me. I can explain." I laughed, cold and sharp. "Explain? You've been playing everyone. I'm done." He pleaded, but I hung up, blocking his number. Sophia filed for an expedited hearing, leveraging Holt's testimony. A week later, Dad confronted me at the shop, his face weary. "Emily, fix this," he said. "James is ruining us." I shook my head. "You chose him," I replied. now face the consequences. Dad's shoulders slumped, and I knew the twist had begun. James's betrayal of Holt, and now Dad was unraveling their plan. The sweet taste of revenge filled me as their world crumbled under their own lies. 6 months later, I stood in my new studio in Denver, the scent of fresh paint and wood shavings filling the air. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the space I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. The court had ruled in my favor, awarding me $900,000, half the $1.8 million, plus $100,000 in damages. James and Dad lost the shop, their accounts frozen, while Holt's testimony sealed their fate. The family business was gone, and I was free. I'd used my share to open Carter Designs, a studio showcasing my work. Clients flocked to my unique pieces, and the business thrived. Mia, my 12-year-old daughter, helped me arrange a display, her laughter a balm to my soul. I'd fought for this, and now it was ours. Work became my joy, each design a testament to my resilience. One afternoon, a regular customer, Daniel, a kind architect, lingered longer than usual. His quiet praise over coffee turned into regular visits, and soon we were dating. His support filled the void left by my family. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from James. "Emily, we're struggling," he wrote. "Can we talk?" I stared at the words, old pain flickering, but it faded fast. Where was his plea when he stole my designs? I typed back, "No need. I've moved on." Then I blocked him, closing that chapter. Mom called next, her voice shaky. "Emily, help us," she begged. I sighed. "You made your choice," I said. "I've made mine." Aunt Clara, my mom's sister, visited that week, bringing cookies. "You're a new woman," she said, her eyes warm. I smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied. She'd supported me through the legal battle, reminding me of my strength. We laughed about the future, about Carter Designs and the life I was building. I realized how far I'd come from a betrayed sister to a thriving designer. True beauty lies in reclaiming your own worth, I thought, watching Mia sketch at the table. James and Dad had thought they could erase me, but their theft had set me free. This studio, my designs, and the love filling my days were proof. I was no longer the woman who lived in their shadow. I was Emily, a mother, a designer, and a woman who knew her value, and I'd never let anyone take that away again. I never imagined a family dinner would reveal their betrayal and lead me to reclaim my worth. James and Dad stole my designs, but I turned their scam into my victory, proving I'm stronger than they thought. Now I'm living a life I love, free from their control. Have you overcome family betrayal? Share your story below to inspire others. If this tale of revenge and renewal resonated with you, hit subscribe and join me for more stories of rising above. Let's keep empowering each other to shine.